Good afternoon. You're tuned in to Gospel for Grampian, and this is the Community Elements show. For our second community element, we've got David Keith from the Waste and Recycling Department of Aberdeen City Council. How are you today?
Very well, thank you, Rob.
Well, thanks very much for coming in. I wonder, could you tell our listeners what your job entails?
Really, public contact and public information. I suppose you could describe us as the smiling face of bins in Aberdeen. There's a lot of information out there for residents. We're there to supply it, to answer queries, resolve issues in some instances. If you get in touch with us with, I'm not going to call it a complaint, but if you
have an issue,
have an issue, we'll do our very, very best to resolve that as far as we can within the restrictions that we have as a department.
Okay, well, in a minute we're going to be talking about a new service and indeed a charge for a service of garden bins and emptying. But before we do that, because it's waste and recycling, there's so many things that I think people get confused about with what can actually go into a recycling bin. What sort of things would you expect to see in there?
Again, I would say that there are leaflets available which we can send out to you if you want to contact us, and I have contact details here. I can maybe run over them later on, but a lot of these documents are actually available online on Aberdeen City Council's web pages. So Bins and Recycling, it's called on the web page. If you click on there and follow the few links, you should find all our PDF documents. So the leaflet that we would send out to householders, whether it's communal bins for tenements and high-rises or wheeled bins for what I call front and back door properties, there are lists there. So when we're looking at plastics, we can't take every plastic. We often get asked, where do I put my flower pots? That's one thing that we can't accept. We don't take used washing up bowls and things like that. So it's basically, rule of thumb is, if you buy it in the supermarket as packaging, we can probably take it.
What about the film off the top of...
Right, film, no, obviously. I mean, there are restrictions, you know. Film's problematic. It twists into ropes. It twists into ropes in the back of the vehicles and jams them. It twists into ropes on the conveyor belts in the sorting facilities. Polythene bags we don't want in the mixed recycling because that obscures what's ever inside the polythene bag, the sensors, and the Mark I human eyeball that's employed in the sorting sheds can't see into a plastic bag, but they do twist into these really, really strong ropes. They can jam the machinery. Polythene, most larger supermarkets have a polythene drop-off point. If you have a collection of plastic bags that you want to get rid of and you don't want to see them go into general waste, drop them off at your supermarket.
And what actually happens to these, the waste and recycling after it's been taken in by the council?
There is a video out there that belongs to Aberdeen City Council, and you can find it on YouTube, and it's about 6 minutes long, and it shows you the journey of an item put into the mixed recycling bin and just what happens to it. So from the householder into the back of our collection vehicle to be deposited at the sorting facility, and then you see there's actually a mile, 1.6 kilometres of conveyor belt that travel at a speed. It's an automated process along with the Mark I human eyeball in the sorting sheds that they'll remove bits of contamination that we don't want to see in the mixed recycling. But you see all the wonderful gadgets and gizmos working to separate the different fractions of paper and cardboard, plastics, the different styles of bottles, metals, glass. Yeah, if you're interested, it's worth a watch. It's 6 minutes of just lets you see what happens to your recycling, and at the very end of that you'll see what happens to the collected material, that it's baled into 1 metre cubes. It's stored at the facility to go into the reprocessors. So your recycling is being made back into stuff. The reprocessors are retrieving it and they are making plastics back into plastics, paper back into paper, glass goes back into glass. But watch the video, it's good knowledge.
Well, what we'll do is we're going to go and make that link to that video available
Excellent.
Through our website, and then people will be able to actually watch that. I'm pretty sure it will be certainly really interesting. Thank you. Up until now, garden waste has been put into the brown bins and has not incurred a charge. So why the change in the service?
Savings had to be made across the council. There were several options considered by the council, and the elected members approved this option. We have to point out that there is no obligation to collect garden waste from residents, and that's any local authority across the UK. Could be seen that the resources used to collect garden waste are taking away those resources that we're using to collect general waste and mixed recycling. So to keep the service going, there has to be a charge involved.
Okay. So what about the number of bins at the property? How many bins can you have?
Capped this at 2 bins per property. This is to ensure that our obligation to collect your food waste is not complicated by dedicating vehicles and manpower to areas of the city that would like more garden bins. In a nutshell, the 2 brown bin policy is to ensure an equality of service across the city to each householder and to all households.
Suppose someone was to say, well, we have a large garden. Can we buy extra bins?
The answer is no. As explained above, the service has, like everybody else within Aberdeen City Council, limited resources. There is the option to use the household waste recycling centres, and we advocate home composting. Also, it's possible for residents to choose to have a contractor remove their excess garden waste at their own cost.
Okay, I mean, sometimes it might be such that some people might say, I'm not able to do that, I'm not able to afford that, but I still have this larger space. What then?
Able to afford the £30 for the bin?
Or indeed doing a contract or taking it?
No, we do appreciate that, and I think we'll have to remember the immortal words of Abraham Lincoln in this case, that you cannot please all of the people all of the time. That yes, we can't continue to collect garden waste without charging for it. There will be a number of people who will find it difficult, but we've tried to put as many options in place as we can. We do have the household waste recycling centres. You can take your garden waste there free of charge. Yes, there's transport involved, but I think when you weigh up all the costs involved, if you're running back and forward to the household waste recycling centre for the 84 pence a week that the garden permit charge is, are you going to be spending that in petrol anyway? So there are pros and cons for people. For those that don't want to tie into the scheme, then there's the option to compost, and I have in the past been a home composter myself, and a home compost heap has to be nothing more complicated than a pile of garden waste covered in a tarpaulin. It's that simple. And again, there is information available. You can contact us. We'll point you in the right direction of where to get the information and how to start out your own wee compost heap. There are no exemptions from the garden permit charge. You have to buy in to be part of it, and that is the only option that we have just now.
Well, that's understandable. You have to simplify things and make things workable for everyone. So people can pay in a number of different ways, and some people would say that direct debit payment would be easier.
Absolutely, and we like to see things made as easy as possible for the residents. However, there was a limited time available for us to set up this permit system. The system adopted was available at the time, and it has a proven history. But we would hope that direct debit will be available in the near future, as it's certainly a popular option for the residents.
Great. Well, I'm sure many people will be relieved to hear about that. There's nothing worse than thinking I've got to go and do this, or I've got to go and do that, and then it just takes extra time. But the direct debit is a good way to do it. Now, some people might say, our property has a shared garden. Can we pay individually for the same permit?
I seem to be saying no an awful lot here, but sorry, again, the answer is no. The system set up issues a permit to an individual build address, and we would hope that neighbours would share the cost for a shared bin between them. So whoever's actually buying the permit takes the hat round their neighbours and receives a suitable contribution from the folk in the block.
Okay, well that's a way to do things, I think. One of the last questions is, what if our permit or bin is stolen? Because I think the permit is actually placed on the front of the bin. What happens if it's stolen? Yeah,
we'd like the permit on what I suppose would be the back of the bin, but underneath the handles. And that's because ideally the bin should be presented handles facing out to the road for the crews. So yeah, the permit does go on the bin. it's allocated to an address, and this is printed, it's actually printed twice on the permit. It's also allocated on our collection system, so the crews have access, many of the vehicles have access to the electronic roll, if you like. This is the same system that's used by the office staff. Stealing a permit or a bin wouldn't do the thief much good, as the crew will be able to see that the bin presented is not allocated to that address. The permits are described as tamper-proof by the suppliers as well. They assure us that it would be nigh on impossible to remove a permit from a bin and reapply it to another. Also, due to the material and design of the permit, it would be really difficult to write over. You would need really specialist equipment, I think, to reprint the label. The crews will be checking the permits on the bins before they empty, so they will see if the bin's in at the wrong house or the wrong street. So certainly if you go and steal a bin and take it to the other side of the city, it's certainly going to be noticed.
I think it gives people more assurance about that, because there's nothing worse than having a bin which is stolen and you paid out £30 for that. I mean,
you can get replacement permits if your bin does go missing. Certainly replacement bins and replacement permits. Now, it's an inconvenience, as with any theft, but you can get a new permit delivered to your address. Bins can be delivered if your bin's stolen.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Where do you see the department going in the future?
Well, luckily I'm very low down the food chain, so please don't take this as a definitive answer. I mean, I think in Aberdeen we do very well. Our recycling rate compared to other cities is high. We want to see what we call the quality of recycling improved. We'd like to see less contamination in the bins, and it's easy. We've all done it. I've done it myself. That the wrong thing goes into the bin and you haven't noticed it. But we're looking at gross contamination here, which leads to rejected loads and a lot of takeout, if you like, from the stream that's going through the sorting facility. So if we could get the quality of the recycling up, less contamination, that would be a really, really good thing. Other issues that we have, I suppose, just like any city, it's not peculiar to Aberdeen at all. We have a lot of bins on the pavement that we would like to see put back inside the property between collection days, because our guidelines are put your bin out the evening or the morning of your collection and return it to your property the day after. And we do appreciate it can be difficult for some properties. They physically have nowhere to store a bin, so we can grant exemptions, if you like. Improvements in the system. We've taken a varied amount of mixed recycling, and I think anything that gets added to that is only a bonus, but we have to wait and see just what the industry can accept. And the factor for us in accepting recycling is, A, can we collect enough of it, and B, do we have an outlet for it? Because we could collect absolutely anything. We could start collection of bird feathers, but we have no way of getting rid of them. Nobody wants to buy bird feathers to reprocess them. And again, that's a ridiculous example, but it's just to illustrate that the stuff we collect, as we talked about earlier at the start of the interview, the stuff we collect does go for reprocessing. So the plastics are made back into plastics, and the paper's made back into paper, and the glass bottles are made back into glass bottles and jars. The metals go back, they're smelted again and turned back into metal products of varying descriptions. So progress. Watch this space, I think, is what I'm trying to say. There's lots and lots of stuff out there that we could cut down on. That's another aspect. Do we need quite so much packaging? Because packaging can be quite problematic. Plastic film that you mentioned earlier. So we're seeing alternatives coming onto the market as well. It's a market in flux, the waste industry, that new things come into the marketplace, come into the homes, and we have to see if we can manage them and use them sustainably, get them back in there to the remanufacture, if you like.
Okay, and what about contact details?
Yes.
You're on Facebook, I believe.
We do. We have a Facebook page. I'm very old school. I tend not to use Facebook. I like pen and ink and stamps myself, but the council phone number is the council phone number, and I won't read it out over the air just in case I make a mistake, but it's printed on, I think most of the council leaflets that you get will certainly have the contact number for the customer contact centre. The staff there will direct any inquiries to the appropriate department, so please, if you want to get hold of us, phone the customer contact centre, use the customer contact centre. We do have an email address waste and recycling at aberdencity.gov.uk. Look at our website as well, which is aberdencity.gov.uk stroke bins and recycling. And we are on facebook.com/recycle for Aberdeen. Have a look. We put lots of information up on Facebook. There's often things that are happening right now, so events that we're attending and what we're hoping to promote at those events will go up on our Facebook page. And if we've got any announcements and things, we'll put them up on there as well. So worth a look if you're a Facebook user.
For the moment, David Keith, can I thank you very much for coming in, and perhaps you might be allowed to come in again at some point.
Rob, it's been a pleasure, and if you invite me back, I would be more than happy to.